wait a couple more minutes before starting, like 05? Should we just jump into it?
Yeah, we can wait another minute or so. Let people
Okay.
file it. Did we get
Cool.
all of the screen sharing and audio and everything figured out?
Mine is good. Tyler, do you want to try presenting once? It might make you quit and restart. Oh, if you're going off Chrome, it should be fine. But you want to just try presenting once?
Yeah.
Just...
Can you see this?
Yeah.
All right. Sweet.
Yeah, I can see it. Cool.
All right.
All right. So I can. Yeah, I'll start first, and then I can throw it over to you in a sec.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think that we're ready to get started. I'm gonna take a minute to introduce you all and stuff and frame it up. So hello, everyone. Madison. I'm gonna help Tyler and Austin facilitate this call today. Today we actually have two guests, and so I'm going to introduce them really quickly. Austin studied linguistics in school and has never looked back. He's interested in experimenting with linguistics, governance, and online identity formation. And Tyler is a designer. He studied computer science in school, is interested in social creative tools and internet forging. And today we're going to be exploring something that I think is filling a huge gap in Web3. Austin and I will do a brief overview of the concept, reviewing their roadmap to show us where they're going, making our own meetings, which I'm excited for. And as always, we'll be tagging you in the Discord thread so you can have discussions there. And we'll also be recording this session to stream on YouTube. And then the last thing before we get started, just announcement, this is the third week of the Public Goods Reading Club, hosted by Henry in the Common Room, and same time as the last 2 weeks, Thursday at 6:45 p.m. Eastern. So let me know if you have any questions or you're interested in that, and I can DM you all the information. Okay, so that's the intro. You all can take it away and get started.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Excited to be here. So let me actually just maybe talk for a moment or two, and then we can talk a little bit about, let me start showing you some things. So Tyler and I, and some other folks in Verses, have been working on a project called Referents, which is spelled ENTS, not CE. I realize it's a bit confusing. The kind of genesis of the project I can talk a little bit more about in a second, but the kind of place it has landed at now is being a collectively created glossary for, primarily focused on words used in and around Web3. And the hope is to, make a tool where people can come and understand what words mean, or terms mean, actually, not just words. Especially for those who are new to the space, because we've seen that like language, just like literally like, random terms that people have just kind of come up with and started using in a certain way, can be especially confusing to folks when they're first, seeing tweets, first reading articles, first coming onto Discord servers. So that's something we wanted to kind of address, work on. There's some kind of deeper roots in the project around an interest in like experimenting with governance, as well as just like playing around with linguistics as like a personal nerd out thing. So what I figured we would do today is we can maybe share a little bit about how the tool works today. I can kind of walk you all through it, just so you can get a sense of like what people have already done. And then Tyler's going to walk us through some of the directions that the project is going in. We'll probably do that for about the first half. And then for the second half, I would actually love it if we could do a joint kind of meaning-making session, which basically means we'll get to hop on the beta and define some terms, and just have a discussion about what the experience of defining terms itself is actually like, which is something that we've done a couple times and has been really interesting. So with that all in mind, maybe let me start off with the with presenting kind of the current tool. Also put the link here so everyone should be able to see exactly what I'm seeing. Madison, which chat should I literally put it in? The thread on the Public Goods Library?
The thread for the convo today would be a good place to put it.
Cool. Okay. Oh, and I feel like, well, I guess you did already intro us. Sorry, I feel like I should have done a whole intro, but that's okay. I'll just keep going. And then Tyler, when you switch over, you feel free to intro yourself more than what Madison said. Apologies. Can folks see my screen? Yes. Okay. Thank you for thumbs up. I will put this in the thread. Cool. So this is our current beta. This is Referents. And it's pretty simple. It's a glossary. There's words with meanings. And a couple things that are fun about this is one, the meanings we have seeded so far have just been from like, a loose group of friends. So you can see there's a lot of terms that have not been defined. And something we're hoping to do with this group and a couple other groups, in our communities are to just have these meaning making sessions where different communities are able to come in, add their own meanings to words, and then I'll explain the group human thing in a second. Sorry, and share the meanings that they personally hold close onto with the group. And so you can kind of see each meaning actually has who submitted it. It's the meanings are stored in Arweave, as well as there's like an upvote and a downvote function. It doesn't do anything like super complicated yet. The upvotes and downvotes is really just used to rank. But we do have some interesting kind of governance experiments that we want to run with like different kinds of voting, what that could be like, what the votes are used for, should we rank based on them, should we divide or not. And then finally, I think one of the other things that I will not like step through right now because I actually just got a new computer and I don't know how I have all the burners set up, is we are using the same kind of proof of human and like lightweight authentication flow that we've had in the past for other drops through verses, which has been really, really nice to be able to reuse kind of that work as well. So this is basically the tool. It's kind of like somewhere between Urban Dictionary and like an actual glossary app on your computer. And maybe I'll turn it over to Tyler now to talk a little bit about the direction we want to go in with this. I'm specifically not going through each feature here because I don't want to anchor us too much on what it is now, because I think there's some pretty cool stuff that Tyler's going to share. And then maybe we can come back to this in a little bit and actually kind of get interactive and jump in and add some meanings. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Tyler, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. Cool. Yeah. So I'm basically just gonna do a like flyby in Figma that I've been working in. Keep in mind, obviously this is early. Like, I'll just go through a standard set of disclaimers here. Like, this is early. This is mainly just like future direction in terms of like basic features to the product we actually want to add. Like there's visual design direction and like how we want the actual experience to feel, that kind of stuff. So I'll go through that. Okay, cool. So can everybody see Figma right now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's a lot here, but just to kind of frame the picture a little bit, what is a glossary, right? What is a dictionary? We want something that feels kind of like a vintage dictionary, something that is like sturdy, something that you can rely on and you can like kind of use as this canonical source of information. So that was like something that we wanted to get out of this, but obviously like there aren't many references for like what collaborative dictionaries actually look like on the web. I think Urban Dictionary and like some kind of hybrid between Urban Dictionary and like Wikipedia is something that was in my head. But just to give a quick visual about like kind of the direction we're heading in. There's like some kind of mock data in here, but basically you would log onto the site and you would have this like basically an app that looks like a dictionary with kind of all these terms defined that you can easily search through. I'm not going to go through all the features, but this, adding an actual meaning to a existing term is like what we're going to be doing later in the session. But you can imagine this experience where you press add meaning, you clearly an address is just a bunch of letters and numbers, and then you submit it, and it gets added to the actual term. So again, like Austin said, voting is basically just meant for ranking to see what people think is actually the most correct or the most valuable. But the point is that anybody can come in and once they verify, obviously they can contribute to whatever they want. So what you're looking at is basically the same feature set that is available today for the most part, but this is just this was my first pass on a visual redesign and trying to make it feel more like a dictionary. The other things that we've been exploring is this idea of collections and where words belong, basically. So this isn't super fleshed out yet, but you could imagine that you could add a term to a collection, say Gitcoin, and within the Gitcoin collection there would be just a list of words, or sorry, a list of terms that are relevant to that. So there are some open questions here around what should there be a difference between a collection of terms and a team? Could there be a Gitcoin org on here versus people are just kind of coming together to collectively assemble terms that are relevant for particular organizations or topics. So I see I put Uniswap and DeFi and cryptography as examples here as well. But basically, there's after this kind of first basic redesign, there's kind of a step that we want to take to see how we can let people organize more, because at the end of the day, it's not just a glossary that people can reference, but really this is a big collaborative knowledge sharing app, and there's a lot more that we can do in terms of adding terms to collections, making the actual citation and writing experience more detailed. So in the placeholder text, I even said oh, you can reference other meanings by using wiki links or something. So you could imagine having this really detailed autocomplete experience, for example, that lets you just reference anything from across the app as you're adding meanings to things, or remixing other existing meanings. So yeah, this is in progress, but hopefully this gives a bit of perspective on where this can go. Oh, and one more fun thing is that I was also playing around with some mobile stuff. So you could imagine a mobile site that is just this. It's your handy dandy Web3 glossary that you can pull up and send to people. So I think that's it.
Thanks, Tyler. Do you mind actually putting it back up, just in case folks wanna react? I figured maybe we would take 5 or 10 minutes here and pause. I realize we just kind of talked to everyone for a little bit, and would love to get kind of reactions, thoughts from the group. Feel free to put questions in the chat as well. Thanks for sharing the Web3 dictionary as well. I guess there isn't a hand raise feature.
Yeah, I think most of the time kind of unmute and kind of talk. I think the background noise from Tanker, I believe.
Oh yeah, Tyler, if you could mute when you're not talking, I think there's some background.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, so I do have a question. So when you guys are getting this dictionary in, what is the vetting process of who how can people see which one is the best version and most realistic, most up to date, most has the most expertise behind that person, or what does that look like? How does someone get to see the first definition?
That's a good question. Maybe I can kind of talk about some of the considerations we have, and then I think Tyler has one version of this in his mocks as well that he can kind of talk to specifically. But a couple things. So on the question of, I think first you asked like, how can you see which one is the best? And from my perspective, there isn't a best one, despite there being upvotes, which I'll address in a second. But kind of more like if there are people using, and if there are enough people using any one of these meanings such that they reach some like critical mass, then that probably means the meaning may be like something you want to know if you encounter it. So we should kind of present it relatively visibly. Like we shouldn't hide it just because it's not like quote unquote like the most upvoted one or the best one. So that's one thing. Is like there's a notion of plurality, and not plurality in like a political sense or anything, but just if there are multiple meanings for a word, which there are for lots of words, then like we want to make sure we can support that. At the same time, there needs to be some sort of ordering, and also there should be some signals between like someone who's trolling versus something that just may be like more of a niche meaning. And so I think the goal behind the upvotes is to use that as like a primitive piece of data to figure out over time what like how we can dial in on like what exactly is most useful. So like we looked at Urban Dictionary's upvote ranking algorithm, for example, and like what constitutes things to be hidden, as well as like Reddit. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and that's something that we're actively trying to figure out. So right now it is ranked based on upvotes, and I think if there are more than 3 meanings in the current beta, then only the top 3 by upvotes are shown. So that's kind of one way we do this. But you could kind of imagine a couple other ways to play around with this based on like how many upvotes versus downvotes there are. Maybe we get rid of upvotes. Maybe we get rid of downvotes. Kind of like removing the dislike button, which I know is controversial. So yeah, there's a couple different kind of ways we can use the votes to figure that out. But maybe I'll let Tyler talk through what he had in mind as well with the mocks he's showing. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually don't think there's anything specific in the mocks here that address that question other than the upvotes here, but like from a very pragmatic perspective, like I think a big part of this will just be making sure that we seed the content with like we just seed the website with really trustworthy content from people that we trust. And Austin, I see Jacqueline joined a little while ago. Austin and Jacqueline, keep me real here. But I feel like just making sure we have good stuff up front, and like data like in the actual app up front will be a big part of it. We've also had some conversations around like verifying people, beyond just like proof of human, but just like people who are like trusted in the community, and whatnot. There's like definitely a balance here between doubling down on the pure like decentralized ethos here of just like leaving it all up to voting, leaving it all up to the community, and like having our say kind of like top curated picks by the people who actually made this. So I think it's still an open question, but I think the TLDR here is like, 1, votes are the primary mechanism. 2, we have to make sure that there's just really good content up front, so people have a standard to go off of. And then 3, considering like verification or deliberately bringing in people who are like well trusted in the community.
Yeah, so that's like kind of like, so how like Gitcoin has the quadratic voting. There's that, right? And there's also that the verification process. Like if they go through a certain process, then their vote has more weight to certain things. Because the reason why I'm asking this, right, is like because to me, like we know that misinformation is out there, right? We know that it's out there, and people don't know that, and they'll just like it whatever the mass is showing. They assume that by the greater number, that the number automatically means that it's trustworthy. But is that really the same thing when we see online, like on a regular Web2 things? We see articles out. We see it on Facebook. We see it on, everybody likes it because that's the kind of source of information that they're getting. So to me, it's like I don't know if. So I guess my question is like, do you guys believe that like by voting? Because what's interesting is that when you go to dictionaries, because you likely don't know whether it's right or not, you're like kind of like you're like hoping to that they are correct, that they're the source of truth. right? So that's why I'm asking, like, what, like, how can we get that verified, even if like outside of just the upvotes? Because although we like to think that that is a source of truth, but like, does that mean like just because the mass believe it, that mean it is? So that I think that's the kind of question that I'm kind of coming in with.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say something that is like only 80% true, like in the universe of all words. So kind of caveat that first. But I would say for the purpose of a glossary, if the goal is to understand what other people mean, then for the most part, if other people mean this and they mean it because they write down the meaning, that is sufficiently true, right? Like insofar as true is like something that is like uh, correctly fits in what this tool is supposed to do. If the goal of the tool, one view of it is like, if the goal of the tool is to help people understand what other people mean when they use a word or a term, then like a meaning that like 6 people use is true in the sense that those 6 people hold it. Now, why I say this is 80% correct is because like if you make a claim in a meaning, there's a difference between the meaning being something people hold, like the sky is green. I can believe that and I can write it down and you can know that like when I use a certain word, that's what I mean. But that's obviously not a true statement in the sense that it's like physically, grounded in the real world. So there's a little bit of complexity there that I, I think in the limit, we definitely need to figure out, or at least have some way to account for. But I actually think in the majority case, like an 80% case, and really what we're trying to seed, the kind of the thing that makes that meaning true is just that like people believe in it. And maybe what that means is like, as long as there's some degree of interaction, which is what the upvotes are really. Upvote and downvote was just the kind of existing format that people use, but like there are lots of ways to put a dot on, so to speak, like in a vote, a meaning. As long as we have some signal that people are actually using this, then like that's a pretty good indicator that it should be shown. And then we can, so I'm like, this is like a separate proposal. Like what if we didn't have upvotes or downvotes, and maybe it was just like nods to this word or not, or we could do it entirely automatically, like, or we could just like try to figure out if people like are tweeting in this way, and like this is what they mean when they send the tweet, which is like more passive and not something that can be done easily automatically. So yeah, there's a couple different kind of flavors of what can constitute true there, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. I was wondering, so how would moderation work? Do you guys plan to implement moderation, or is it more like a very free kind of situation? How does that look like to you guys?
Yeah. I have thoughts too, but Tyler, I know we've been talking about this more recently. Do you want to take a stab first?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is still in flux, but I think the core of the idea here is simple, that we'll just have like a core set of people who are contributing to the website that will look over submissions as they come in. And at a basic level, there's like obvious hate speech and discrimination that or if people are just trolling, right, or we will most likely remove everything regarding that. But in terms of like moderating the actual quality of the content, I think that's like, this gets back to your like initial question, like how do we, because I feel like moderation isn't just like making sure people are like behaving appropriately on it, or like not writing hate speech. It's like also around the validity of the content. So I think we're still figuring this out, but the basic idea is just having like a core set, or like a core committee that regularly reviews things, and whether or not the moderation process involves just removing the meanings completely, or like starting a conversation with the people like who make them to like amend and update what they wrote. That's still up for discussion. But yeah, I'm curious if there are like more sophisticated ideas here around moderation, and like maybe we can have moderation like delegates, or like if this ends up growing to like thousands of people using it or contributing, then like obviously it can't just be a small set of people. So there's scaling issues here as well.
I just kind of wanted to add on to that. I'm Jacqueline, one of the other contributors, and for moderation, specifically for like hate speech and for concerning content, we have already like scripts in place to be able to hide specific submissions. But because we're using Arweave, like something that we had to think about was actually like we can hide it on our front end, but that will still be like floating around in the Arweave like world attached with the tags that it's associated with reference, because like the whole point of Arweave is that it's like perma web. So that's like something that is kind of like something we have to think about and is kind of concerning, because if people do submit like hate speech or like troll things, like we can just hide it on the front end, but it's actually still there and still associated with us.
Oh, one other thing I was going to add to that is, and you'll see this when, or if you choose to go through and add a meaning in a little bit, is we are asking people to verify with the proof of human, I guess, with the Twitter account, and then that is on Arweave and not in the current version of the UI, linked to the meanings you add. And obviously, like you can make a fake Twitter account. Like there's like ways to get around all these things. So again, this is like an 80%. I think 80% complete solution, but there is the intention is to link people's identities in some case, or an identity they have, for some accountability purposes to the ways they contribute. This is also true about the votes, so I guess that's less potentially incriminating than than adding a meaning that is something that you don't want to be associated with. So there's a little bit of accountability mechanism that links that together as well. I also did see a question from Joel around changing meanings over time. And so this is also another one that I'm curious what folks' thoughts are, because there's a lot of different meanings, I guess, of what changing over time could have, right? One is like, I wrote, like from an author's perspective, I wrote this thing, I don't want, like, I want to revise what I said, like the thing associated with my name, I wish said differently. So that's like one thing. An orthogonal thing that could also happen is like, I'm amending this meaning, the meaning is like a typo, so the votes or the whatever signal that this meaning is real or legit in the system should persist. That's like another one, is like this like persistence question. And another one is like, well, what if I want to like fork or like remix someone else's meaning? And kind of Tyler talked about this a little bit in the WikiLinks example he gave, where he was like, well, you could like explicitly reference something, which is like a fork, but also an edit, right? But then in that case, the old one still remains. So there's kind of like, is it versioning or is it actually changing the original? So these are all things that I think we're playing around with. It's definitely possible. Like one version of that is you can just make a new meaning and link to the old one and say it's a change. But as far as like persisting the votes and things, it's things we're still figuring out. Yeah, exactly. Like different editions.
Something I found really interesting is that language are always changing, because it's just a way of like adaptation, like who's using it and then what under what connotation and whatnot. So yeah. I do have another question. Like, have you guys? I'm assuming you guys have already kind of. I wonder if you guys have already looked at like how Wikipedia operates. Like, is that something that you guys kind of want to align yourself to, or do you think it will be like kind of slightly different there?
In what sense? In terms of like,
So I believe someone you might have fact checked me on this, but I think someone told me that the Wikipedia moderation process is like some people actually have more. It's not like, even though it's assumed to be open to the public, some people actually have more weight in like removing content or like adding content due to like maybe expertise. But I think I would have to read more on that. But it's kind of like, have you guys, how aligned of with Wikipedia are you guys when you guys are operating like this, Web3 glossary? Like, do you find it to be gonna be different if you're gonna study like the way Wikipedia operate? Because is Wikipedia truly decentralized and so on?
Is anything truly decentralized? Go
That is
debate.
true.
No, I'm just
Isn't
kidding.
that a most interesting question? Yeah.
So I think it's relative, and I can maybe I have looked a bit at Wikipedia, and I can touch on maybe the meaningful dimensions that contribute to decentralizedness. Sorry, off my finger. That are that where we like differ and are similar. So I don't remember the exact number, but my understanding of Wikipedia is like anyone can contribute to most posts. Someone who's contributed some amount, I think it's like 1 or 2 or 10 changes that have been accepted, can contribute to some more sensitive posts like presidents and whatnot. And then some additional set of people who have like contributed or had their contributions or like edits to sensitive posts approved can then become moderators. And I think there's like, those are the 3 tiers or something like that. I'm sure there's someone on this call that knows this better than me, so feel free to pipe up if that's off. But the thing that I noticed in looking at this is that the keys to the next level, so to speak, are denominated in terms of your activities on the platform, as opposed to like, do we think you are worthy enough based on some like subjective thing, like some higher up group of people like you, or even like something that is not strictly person based, but like separate, like can you buy, the membership or whatever. And so in that sense, I think we have wanted to keep that similar mechanic of like the thing needed to I guess progress in ability is like the activity that's baked into the tool. An earlier version of Reference had like a similar structure. So it was like anyone could vote, but you had to vote in order to contribute. And in order to like make a collection or something, you had to have contributed successfully, like some tiered system like that. I don't think we actually ended up implementing that at first. It's just like unnecessarily complicated for what we were going for. That was something we had talked about. And while it doesn't follow the same kind of rules and like the roles themselves don't have the same power as in Wikipedia, I think there is interest in doing something that's like denominated in terms of the activities on the actual platform. The only other thing I'll say, and I'd love to hear, I guess, and I know Tyler and Jacqueline have both thought about this a lot as well, is there is a notion of, I think, correctness that is expected in Wikipedia, because the information, like the goal of Wikipedia, I think, is to communicate the information. Whereas, like I was mentioning earlier, one of the, like maybe a goal instead, or like an additional shared goal for Reference is more telling you what other people mean when they use terms, but not necessarily conveying like a single correct holistic truth for each item, because that doesn't really, it doesn't really map over. And so because of that, there may be some differences in how we do the roles and permissioning as well. But Tyler, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm thinking about this is like, forgive me if I go a little abstract for a second. Like, I think with Web3 projects in general, it can be easy to fall into this trap of like being dogmatic, I think, about decentralization sometimes, or like, just trying to make some like a process or like a product or something like completely or like as decentralized as possible for this, almost for the sake of it, rather than it being like useful for the actual thing that you're building. So whether like Austin was saying, like there are plenty of techniques that we can try to make sure that like, the voting process is fair, or like, there are tiers to the system. But at the end of the day, it's like, if somebody who's new to Web3 is coming to this because they're like, I just want to learn what these things mean, I don't know what this word means, and them having some sort of sense that, there's either curation involved, or they know that experts actually provided realistic answers, then I think that's just as important as making sure that people can contribute. So I'm like open to some kind of like hybrid thing here to make sure that like people know that this is trustworthy, while still making sure that it's not like completely definitive, right? Because it's like, if the idea here is that, I can hop onto the page for address, right? And I want to read about what an address is. Like, if I'm coming from a CS background, I might want to read about the cryptography related to it. Or, if I have no background at all, I might want to see some kind of other analogy that is like equally as informative, but like just doesn't have all the technical detail. So, yeah, I think it's like, maybe this is just something about like copywriting on the actual website, making sure that people are informed that like, oh, this isn't like one specific definition, this is like a collection of things. There are experts who like come here and like curate things, but ultimately anybody can contribute. Making the the actual tier process or the actual tiering of like moderation a little bit more clear as well. So I think there's solutions here. We just have to try them out and discuss them. Yeah, Jacqueline, I'm curious if you have thoughts here.
You all sum things up pretty well, but yeah, I guess like in general for a lot of like Web3 things, like to establish trust, people generally have to have some type of identity attached, like not necessarily your real identity, but that's something that we are still kind of figuring out. Like most of the versus drops so far don't really have like very strong like this was created by X, Y, and Z. Just more of like this is generally created by this collective verses. So that's kind of like the vibe that we're going with. But something that like we still actually have to discuss more is like how do we communicate like the leadership or like the direction of who is like moderating and like managing this kind of tool. And we're probably going to be like we're kind of like in between not fully pseudonymous but also not very like people's face about like our private identities and like who we really are. So I feel like that's a general like bigger discussion across Web3 of people are deciding like how to present themselves for projects.
I wonder if you guys are taking experience, like for example, just the length of time within that account is being held. For example, like let's say they did rabbit hole things, right? Can you tell they've gone through these certain experience? So like pretty much like let's see POAPs, like or have they been involved in going to conferences or something like that. So that means that they are showing in public with but still keeping their identity still anonymous. Like we don't know who they are, but we can show through like all these credentials that they are involved. I think it's just really I think identification is really interesting, especially regarding this case.
Yeah, that's an amazing idea actually. And I'm like kind of surprised we only just started talking about that now, because that's like I feel like that's the whole point of some of these things, you know, is like you log into a new service and like it has context on what you've done before, right? So like if we, I mean, I guess this is just the start of credentialing of that kind, but you know, rabbit hole's pretty well known. There are plenty of, I feel like we should just do that. That's like just regardless of whether or not we curate information or like the actual structure of moderation here, just showing people's credentials from like kind of these trusted events or online services is definitely a good way to initially do some kind of filter. You can bake it into the whole experience.
Yeah, I think to like add on to that, like I think it'd be really cool if we could branch out into using some of the decentralized social media protocols. Like I know like Lens protocol is getting some traction right now, and we didn't really think about using something like that before because we were just trying to push an MVP out. But I think it'd be cool to like have like identities from like a protocol like be attached. Right now, all we pull in is their ENS name if they have one, and their ENS image will show up in the corner in the previous iteration of the design. So like it'll be cool to pull in like more of like existing protocols and like have a bit of a social graph associated with this. Oh, I guess also one thing we discussed before was maybe requiring that people have a certain amount of ETH in their wallets to prevent spam. That was like a conversation that we had like initially, but then we decided against it because the whole point of like this tool was to have it be accessible to newbies as well. So we didn't want to limit people, even if it was like you need $1 of some type of currency in your account. We still felt like that was like could be like a barrier to people who are completely new to Web3. So we didn't end up going down that route to like require that.
Yeah, this is really cool, and I liked what you said there in Len's question because what's so cool about this and I guess Web3 broadly is the opportunity to embed values into what we're doing, right? So you can ask these questions of like, do we value experience? And then like how long they've been on the platform, and being able to integrate that as well. So super interesting conversation, and there's just like so much freedom for basically identifying, what you want to reward and what you want to put value on, and then integrating that into the design.
So TLDR, tokens are good. Show tokens.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on bound tokens?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of what a credential is, right? It's like soulbound token in the first place. It's not like you can sell credentials; it has to be earned. So, I mean, do you want like our general thoughts on them, or like how they apply to this specifically, or?
Yeah, because originally I think you guys were just talking about just general like potential. But I don't think so bound tickets are actually like, well into it. Like we don't really have. I mean, I've only kind of briefly seen like the white paper. I just don't know like how much of the progress in that. But yeah, I don't know. Just wanted to see your thoughts on it. Like, I guess the plans you go bound.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, um, I'm very bullish on them personally. I feel like uh, I've been using the example of like, oh, eventually university degrees will be like soulbound NFTs or something for a while, and like I just saw some threads recently that were talking about that. But I also think like, especially with education online, I had this idea a little while ago about having this kind of like a learn token or a teach token where like you'd be rewarded it like across different kind of knowledge sharing platforms. So for example, like you could imagine that for giving really good responses on Stack Overflow, you might be given like a teach token, or maybe like a programming specific like teaching token, and like let's say you have that from Stack Overflow, you come back onto Referents, and we notice that like you're particularly qualified to answer like programming related, or to give meanings to programming related terms. I think there's like a lot of opportunity here, both like in terms of creating new token standards, and also just like trying to figure out a way to like get expertise from across different parts of the internet like into one place, and also like make sure that that expertise is like recognized in a like trustable way. So I think there's a lot of juice there. It's just like nobody's built it yet. Like there's still a lot to be done in terms of like social coordination around it too. So I mean, you could also imagine a world where like you accumulate kind of upvotes on your profile on Reference, and then you can like maybe it's either you're like immediately granted tokens for like having really good contributions, or like you can redeem like the votes that you've been awarded or something for like reference tokens or something, and you can use them on other knowledge sharing services. But yeah, I think there's like in terms of incentivizing experts from around the web to contribute to projects like this, whether it's on Reference or something else, I think soulbound credentialing is like the key to it for sure.
I will also say that it's interesting to bring that up, Tyler, because there are orgs, not Web3 orgs, that within their organization make decisions that way. So like a believability weighted decision making, where it's like every decision has some democratic vote, but like we get multipliers on our votes if based on some system, which I can go into. The system believes that I have expertise in this area, so like the person who decides whether or not something has high legal risk probably should have more votes if they are a lawyer versus not. But nobody gets no votes is kind of like one set of parameters for a system like this. You can imagine that the people who do that is a place called Bridgewater, if folks are curious. Did someone else come off mute? I wasn't sure to ask something.
I wonder if Ben was off mute earlier. I mean, I see Ben being off mute now.
Oh, yes. It's okay if not. If you're just off mute and chilling, I don't want to put you on the spot. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. Do you have anything next we're going on while we wait for if anybody? Just want to make sure if anybody's interested in like thoughts or questions and you guys don't want to say it out loud, use the thread that we have.
Yeah. Happy to answer any questions. So.
I would like to chime in. I think one thing that I really like about what you were suggesting was to kind of cluster information, because the meaning for some words is not necessarily for one group of individuals and for another. And I think it's going to be very interesting when you look for. I'm curious about how you plan to do this. Don't know if you mentioned it, but I think not. If you look for a word and it can have several meanings for different groups, and you have those meanings inside your inside the platform, then how to say, okay, like this is the meaning for example, I don't know, this refi organization, blah blah blah, and this is the meaning for this and for different individuals or different clusters. I don't know if that was clear.
Sorry, and just to clarify, when you say clusters here, you mean clusters of people, of communities, of terms?
I am meaning it in a broad sense because I don't even know if it will be like clusters of like a specific organization that defines this word as, you know, having these 3 pillars or like sustainability, and then like from another organization, but then it can be like organization of organizations, or I don't even know, like if these clusters can be made, I guess, out of individuals or organizations in whole.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, like, there's definitely a rabbit hole here that you can go down in terms of just like how you organize information in general. And like, you know, kind of general techniques for knowledge sharing and knowledge collection. But I think the basic idea here is that like we still want to keep the contribution model simple, and like any kind of like super in-depth data analysis or like, you know, clustering around terms, I feel like could be a secondary thing, or like at least like a next step afterwards. But I mean, at a basic level, we were talking about this concept of collections. We're also talking about like, you know, should organizations be kind of a primitive in the system as well. But I think the basic idea of like a collection of terms, right, that like people collect, you know, say Gitcoin, which is on the screen right now, would cover a lot of those needs. And then, you know, if people, you know, we could build a basic API for like querying like terms and collections if people want to go like really in depth and see like how things connect. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do there, for sure. But starting simple is good too.
Yeah, I was gonna also respond to kind of Joel's question that Lynn bumped up in the chat around like other co-creation primitives, defining, tagging, grouping, linking, etc. So maybe not to go through all of them, but I'll just talk about tagging because I think the answer there applies to your question as a whole. We had initially thought about having tags as a primitive, where a collection is a specific use case for tags that, you know, if I just, all my tags were names of things that everyone knew were collections, whether the name of the collector or something like that, then you would effectively have collections. And you could also do lots of other things. And I actually think the challenge with tags generally, and I think Tyler had a fun, mini, very eloquent kind of a rant, just eloquent speech about tags, is that the complexity kind of just explodes because everyone can use them however they want. And so then you end up with a situation where like there's probably more noise than you want, unless you like seed it perfectly correctly at the beginning, where it's like self-evident what the like relatively bounded set of tags on a single dimension are, and everyone just kind of gets it at first, right? And so absent those two cases, my preference, I guess, is to I'm a bit like wary of generic tags, generic like this is also why like collaborative tools of thought or like collaborative digital gardens are like hard, because people don't know like what's the right way. Everyone else wants to like connect things in their mind, and so then there's that's an argument for like less complexity or like almost too fundamental primitives. And then on the flip side, the argument for collections that I would give is I think collections in particular imply some degree of like the same person holds all of these meanings together somehow in their mind, right? I think that's the like most abstract implementation. I think in practice, we hope a collection is like one person puts all these meanings together because they believe in all these meanings. And that's actually really useful because like you rarely use terms in isolation. And it's like really useful to know, especially if people define terms with each other, like what, Gitcoin thinks all these words mean, because they are all going to be used to define each other. And so now you're kind of in the like linguistic cinematic universe, so to speak, of like an individual person's mind or like a shared group of people's mind, which then can add value to actually being able to use those meanings, those terms correctly. Yes, basically, to Joel's comment.
So we do have about 6 minutes left until it ends, but if you all have time after,
Yeah, I mean,
around
at a basic level, it's like,
oh, lag.
For people who aren't looking at the chat, Joel said it seems like there should be like some kind of pruning mechanism to clean up the noise, especially if you have tags all over the place. I mean, like largely, I guess that's what voting is meant to do, right? Or people just like engaging with the content so we can actually see what's good. So these problems are not unique to this in particular. If we go back to the early days of the internet, an old company called Google had to figure out a way to rank what pages were actually relevant to you based on their links and connections to other things. So there are so many techniques that we can try here just to make sure that at the end of the day people come to this thing and it's useful. I think it's super easy when you build any kind of knowledge sharing tool to go super deep into like data structures and like the abstract problems about like how things connect and stuff without it actually being particularly useful at the end of the day. So I think like if we need to add more complexity to it, to account for like how people actually think about these things, then we should. But I think like keeping with a few like simple heuristics for like pruning, cleaning up noise and categorizing things is the way to go. And then if we need to make this into a full-fledged wiki platform, then eventually we can do that.
Yeah, I wonder if you guys wanted us to go through the process of adding our own meaning to your glossary.
Yeah. I realized I had said that was going to be the second half. We had such a good discussion that we didn't really get around to it. But if folks want to do that, you can just go to, I'll put the URL in again. You can just go to Referents and add a meaning. It will ask you all to verify, which involves like a wallet and a tweet. And if folks aren't comfortable doing that, that's obviously okay. But that's just the current, the way the current beta works. And it also does say at the top not to share on social media. You don't have to delete the tweet or anything. I realize it's a bit conflicting. Just just feel free to click through all the buttons and verify and then add something. I would step through it with everyone here, but maybe in the interest of time, I'll just say folks are welcome to do that if they want to take a moment. And if anyone runs into any bugs, please let us know.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that earlier. But yeah, someone should create a word for regen. I realized regen is not in there.
You can also add words. Yes.
Yeah, well, check your definition, Madison.
I have to think about it. I don't know what a really good definition would be. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go define lazy or something. I feel like I know it really well. So words I know really well.
Lazy is good.
Hey guys, I gotta jump off here, but I just wanted to say it was amazing discussion. I really enjoyed it. I didn't say anything, but I was just listening and fascinated by all the ideas and great minds here. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks, Callisto.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for joining.
Hey.
All right. What word are we adding? Madison, I'll do one here right now.
It'd be interesting if we all do one right now. Like pretty much we just discuss a real quick one word definition and we just all add that using one account just for the sake of brevity. But yeah, definitely I would recommend anybody interested to join and
Yeah,
work
I
on
put
that.
something up. Oh yes, there's an Easter egg. We have real-time cursor chat so people can talk to people. If you go on there and you press / from someone else in Versus who made a fun little plugin.
This is cool. This is really cool.
There's no moderation on this either, so please don't say anything mean. This is being recorded. That's my moderation tool. Ask nicely with no accountability. Okay, but what Madison? What meaning are we adding? What are we adding?
Regen.
Regen. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
And we're cool to share the verification for Proof of Human on Twitter, right?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Don't worry about that. I just didn't want to add that in the thing as well. Okay, regen. Like this, Madison, or regent.
REGEN. Regen.
Oh.
Regeneration. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Can you see what my verification tweet is? No, you can't. Okay. Well, you'll see that there's the signature has both your Twitter handle. The signature has both your Twitter handle and your username in it, which I'm Birder Bob. Hello, I've been doxxed. And then but you're just the username you pick is something you set up at onboarding, so that doesn't have to be your handle. Oh no!
Should we just change that username by chance, or would
Sorry?
it be kind of like so? Would that username, can you change it, or is it kind of like permanent? It's like so bound. Like when you go in and you log in.
It is not intended to be soul-bound. I just don't think we've built a button to change it yet.
Gotcha. So, for example, if you come in and you define that word and you change your username, would it stick with you, or would it stay as that kind of abandoned username?
So, no, it should stick with you.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't think it's like a okay. And then what is the meaning we're going to add first? So I don't want to just draft it in the chat.
Gary, do you have so Gary's here. We're trying to think of a definition for regen. How would you define regen?
There's multiple terms. There's a noun, there's a verb.
I don't know, my verification is not working.
What's happening?
Oh, I think he said his verification isn't working. But if you want to throw in a meaning in the chat, we can use that one.
Okay, I'll write it down.
It will be stored on the blockchain forever, but it's no big deal.
Wait, what does regen mean?
Yeah, I think this needs to be defined. I think that's a good question to crowdsource.
It's like the whole refi movement and like like DeFi. It's like they're trying to, and like degens. It's like instead of like being like shill and like that whole culture, they're trying to like be like anti like just capitalism. We're gonna do refi and like regen. It's like the whole thing.
Yeah, I would basically I would explain it as, so if you say regen, as like regen can be like a person, like I'm a regen, like not a degen, someone who is committed to building tools or projects or culture in a way that is regenerative to people and the planet, like using Web3 technologies. I'm not sure how you would make that in a concise way, but so it could be like regen can mean a person. Regen is also like a verb, like you're regenerating something. So there's kind of like multiple meanings to it.
I think it's someone that is focused on supporting the regeneration of things that we should value, like our health, our relationships with each other, our democracies, our natural ecosystems, things like that.
Yeah, I would say so for this definition, instead of saying regenerating the planet, maybe like people and the planet, because like it is about, you know, like natural ecosystems and climate change, but more than that too.
Got it. Okay.
Oh yeah, Gary actually wrote a thread on this yesterday. I can link.
I actually got to bounce off too as well. I have another meeting.
Yeah.
But
All good.
Yeah,
I
this
will
is great.
add
Thank you.
this. Yeah, I will add this to the glossary. And yeah, thanks for the feedback, everyone. It was super awesome.
Thank you all so much for this. This is cool. I'm glad we added regen. I love seeing this. I'll send all the links that were throughout the call today as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, just want to say thanks so much again for hosting a call with us. Appreciate it.